Welcome to Season Liberally 101. My name is Cecil. Today we are going to be doing some egg cookery. Eggs are kind of complex to cook. The couple of recipes I'm going to give you today are going to be really simple. In the future, I may do a more complex version of this on the regular portion of the channel, but in this playlist, we're going to keep it really simple today. I'm going to show you a few dishes, some really easy methods to cook eggs, and then one specific dish that is a really great brunch dish. That's going to be the last thing I show you today. Eggs are kind of complex. They're used, of course, in the United States, they're kind of a mainstay for breakfast, and we use them in other savory dishes. But they're also used a lot in baking. And one of the things you got to understand is that an egg, there's two different pieces to an egg. There's the white and the yolk, and they cook very differently because they're made of different things. So the white portion of the egg is a lot of protein and a lot of water. And so that portion of the egg is going to cook a little differently than the yolk, which has a lot of vitamins, a lot of fat, and also some protein. So that's why an egg can be solid, the white can be solid, and the yolk can still be liquid. A lot of times that's really the preferred thing that a lot of people want if they're not scrambling their eggs, is the yolk to be liquid and the whites to be solid. And that can be a little difficult to achieve. So I'm going to show you a couple of things today on how to cook some eggs, and so I hope this is useful to you. When you cook eggs in the shell, the first thing you have to understand is that it's gonna be a lot easier to get an older egg out of the shell than it is a fresher, because the egg shell itself is porous. And so there will be, it will start to separate that little membrane inside away from the egg, and so when you boil a egg that has been sitting around in your fridge for a week or two, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to get it out of the shell than it is if you just went out and bought eggs today and you use those eggs. So I'm going to cook a couple of eggs in the shell here real quick. This is dead easy and super easy. So, but really, once you know these techniques, you can be using them all the time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cook an egg soft boiled. So soft boiled eggs, that's going to require your water to be boiling before you put the egg in. So I'm going to show you what it looks like when I soft boil an egg, just so you could see what a soft boiled egg looks like inside. So a soft boiled egg does have a softer white, but it is completely set and a liquid yolk. So I'm going to drop it gently in. And now the eggs are not at a rolling boil, they're at a mild simmer. I'm going to set my timer, and then we are going to wait until the egg is finished. This egg here has been cooking for 6 minutes. So we have to remember that a soft-boiled egg, 6-minute egg. You want to put it in the boiling water, start your timer at 6, and then immediately when your timer goes off, take it out. I normally run these directly under the sink for a second to shock them, but today I want to show you, I have to show you it in a bowl here because I want to show you how easy it is to peel, and I can't do that over at the sink because I just don't have a camera set up over there. So I'm going to do that in a second, but I'm going to shock it here. You can also use this ice water. Ice water is perfectly fine. It's a nice, great way to shock it. I just like to run it under water afterwards because sometimes the eggshell can stick to it, and it might be very difficult to see. Okay, the egg's coming out. We're going to put it into the cold water just to shock it very quickly. I'm going to power down this. Now, when I shock this egg, I'm going to peel it here so you could see. The egg's cool-ish on the outside, but you can still feel it's warm inside. Hit it a couple times, and now I'm just going to peel it. I'm going to peel it over here. And I don't know if you can see how easy this is coming off. This is because this egg is like a week old. It's been sitting inside my fridge for a while. And so it is very, very easy to peel out of this shell. Now, there is a little piece of shell that I can feel on here. I could probably wipe it clean with like this paper towel, but I'm just going to run it under the cold water real quick just to make sure. Just to make sure that I knock all the shell off of it. Now I'm going to pat it dry, and I'm going to show you what the inside of one of these eggs should look like. So you want to simmer this egg for about 6 minutes if you want this consistency. If you want it a little harder than this, if you want to make sure that the yolk is a little more set, so it's almost like an over medium fried egg, then you want to go for 7 minutes. But after that, it's going to start to really cook the inside of the yolk pretty quickly. So now I'm going to show you a hard-boiled egg. Hard-boiled eggs are, I cannot tell you how many bad hard-boiled eggs I've had in my life. Hard-boiled eggs are not difficult to make, but people seem to think that you can just boil an egg infinitely. The problem with boiling an egg too long is that the whites itself have a little bit of sulfur in them. And if you overcook the egg, it will then release that sulfur, and that sulfur will attach to the yolk. If you've ever broken into a hard-boiled egg or had somebody serve you a hard-boiled egg and the inside is green, that's sulfur, and that's why the egg smells bad. Those are almost always overcooked and they're really unappetizing. So hard-boiled eggs, not difficult, but you want to make sure that you cook them correctly every time. So what you got to do is you got to start with the egg in the pot, and then we're going to fill this up with cold water. So just like I did before, I'm going to be starting these, I'm going to be putting the egg in. I want to make sure that there's enough liquid to cover the egg and that the egg itself is immersed completely in the cold water. Why are we using cold water? Well, what we want is for the egg to come up to temperature with the water. If I were to drop this into boiling water, what happens is the outside portion of the egg gets hotter faster, which is why when we soft boil an egg, the interior of the egg stays liquid while the outside cooks. Well, we don't want that. We want the whole egg to come up to temperature together. So that's why we put it into cold water. So now we have the water, it's going to start to boil. This is the part that people seem to forget. You have to pay attention to exactly when the water starts to boil. Once the water starts to boil, then you want to hit your timer and set your timer for 12 minutes. 12 minutes will make sure that your egg is completely cooked all the way through with a nice bright yellow center that is 100% cooked, and that's what you want to cook your egg. That's how you want to cook your hard-boiled eggs. If you leave it in there longer, there's a chance that that sulfur is going to release. And if you're not paying attention when it starts, and then you start your 12-minute timer and it's been going for 2 or 3 minutes and it's been boiling, you could have a 15, 16, 17-minute egg, and that's going to be a problem. It might actually release the sulfur and you get those green-looking eggs, which look pretty terrible and taste pretty terrible. So now, just like our soft-boiled eggs, once the water comes to a boil, we do not want it to be a rolling boil. It's going to bang that egg around in the bottom. We don't want that to happen. So I'm going to set it to a simmer now, okay? I'm also going to set my timer for 12 minutes. These eggs will be done in 12 minutes, and they're going to be a perfectly made hard-boiled egg. Okay, so our egg cooked for 12 straight minutes. We're going to break it open. You can feel that the egg itself is nice and firm, and I'm going to cut it, and there will be no green inside this egg. So as you can see, it's fully cooked all the way through to the center, and it's just barely cooked. It's barely finished there, which is what you want. You want to make sure that your egg is just barely finished there because you don't want it to keep cooking. If it's going to keep cooking, you're going to have a real issue with that green that pops in. So this egg is like I say, perfectly cooked, and this would make a great deviled egg. This will make a great, it'll make a great egg salad. And if you're going to be, if you're just going to have a nice hard-boiled egg, this is the temperature and the length of time that you want to cook it. So now I'm going to cook a sunny-side-up egg. Sunny-side-up eggs only cook on one side of the egg. So the first thing we do is we get a little knob of butter, and we drop it into our pan. Okay, eggs are really neutral. And so, so it's nice to have a nice, good, solid, good quality butter because it makes the eggs just taste better. We're going to just drop an egg directly in here. And so I'm going to crack the egg. You can crack the egg in a bowl if you don't want to. If you want to make sure you don't get a piece of shell in there. Crack the egg in a bowl and then put it in. I'm just going to crack it directly into here. So now I have my pan on about medium heat. And one of the things I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to cover this egg. I want to cover it quickly because the egg itself is going to start to run, and the bottom I want to make sure that the bottom and the top also cook a little bit. Some people like sunny side eggs where they're just completely wet on the top, and so they don't care that the whites are not cooked. I tend to think that a lot of people, the people that I've cooked for, all like the whites to be at least close to solid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a tiny little, very close cover on top of here. And what that's going to do is trap in that steam that's coming off the egg. The egg itself is cooking nice and slow on the bottom, and that steam is going to start to cook the top just a little bit. Now, sunny side up eggs are runny. They're going to be, the yolk's going to be runny, and the white may be a little runny too. This helps with that process to try to make sure that the yolk is only runny and that the white itself is sort of solid. Now, one of the things that happens when you cook an egg is that the egg white cooks and coagulates, which means gets solid, a little quicker and at a lower temperature than the yolk does. So that does help with the process of keeping the yolks a little bit liquid while the whites do become solid. But that temperature range is only about 10 degrees. So it's not a huge range of temperature. It's not as if the yolks are still liquid at 200 and the white gets solid at 150. It's not like that at all. And that's actually kind of hard to maintain on a stove, and it's very hard to maintain on boiling water and things like that. So that's why we're using this lid here, just to cover it up enough so that it gets just that tiny bit of white to actually be solid on top. Now, when I cook this egg, I'm going to leave this down. I don't want to take this off until I'm finished, okay? The good thing is I'm using a glass lid so I can see through it. So that's actually very helpful to you. If you don't have a glass lid, you want to wait just a little bit of time. Right now, this egg's been cooking for about 2.5 minutes, and I could see it's starting to lift up underneath. It's on a medium heat here. You don't want this on high. If you put it on high, the bottom will cook way too fast, and it'll actually overcook the egg. I'm also not crazy about these kind of eggs too, because I do feel like the bottom piece of the egg automatically gets cooked a little more than the rest of the egg. I like my eggs over easy, over medium. So now, as we can see, there still was a little tiny bit of white on that yolk, and it's starting to become translucent in here. And so we can see that the yolk itself is, the white itself is starting to solidify. We'll know it's done once that happens, and I'll be able to take it off, and we'll know all the white has been cooked. So this is my sunny side up egg. I'm going to take it out of the pan and put it on a plate, and that is a sunny side up egg. The bottom itself is a little cooked. Like I said, it's cooked to, it's not brown down here, as you can see. It's not browned, but it is very solid. And then the outside here is completely cooked. This is what I would serve someone if they wanted a sunny side up egg. Of course, if they wanted it, a little more underdone than this, you could certainly cook it a little less than this. I'm not crazy about eggs that have whites that are still runny. It's just not. It's just unappetizing to me personally, and I'm going to eat this egg, so I cooked it this much for me. You can, of course, cook this a little less. And remember that undercooked eggs can get you sick, so that's something you have to consider. And when I break into this egg, you can see that the inside, there's a nice yolk here. This yolk is, of course, there's going to be more of it. It's going to be done on the bottom because the egg sat on its bottom for a long time. That's why I like over easy eggs, because more of the yolk is actually runny in an over easy egg. As you can see, there's a piece here at the bottom that is a lot more coagulated than the top portion is. So that's your sunny side up egg. I'm going to show you how to cook an over easy egg now. Over easy eggs are kind of my favorite eggs. Now, over easy means the whites are completely cooked and the yolks are not set. Over medium means that the whites are completely cooked and the yolks are partially set. So they're set a little bit on the top and the bottom. I'm going to show you how to cook an over easy egg. Now you would just, if you were going to cook an over medium or an over well egg, you would just cook it a little longer on both sides. That's all you would have to do. So now I'm going to cook this over easy egg for you. I'm going to put a little bit of butter in the pan. Break the egg directly into the butter portion and let it start to firm up. So this pan is at a medium-high heat. It's going to be a little hotter than your sunny side up egg pan. I'm going to flip this egg over because it's completely cooked on the bottom and I don't want to overcook it. Okay, so the egg's only been cooking for a couple minutes. It feels like it's done. I'm touching around the sides and it's not looking like it's a lot of liquid. There's liquid in the center. I'm going to take the egg off and put it on a plate and then cut it open. Okay, so here's my over easy egg. As you can see when I break into it, it is a liquid center. All the whites are completely firm, and that is what an over easy egg looks like. In my opinion, this is kind of the perfect fried egg, and the soft-boiled egg is the perfect boiled egg, but you know, of course, your mileage may vary. Okay, now I'm gonna make very basic, simple scrambled eggs. Scrambled eggs are a wonderful palette to add things to. You can add some fresh herbs, you can add some beautiful vegetables. I'm just gonna show you though, how to cook, specifically cook, very basic, simple, no ingredient except for eggs, scrambled eggs. So, and I take that back because I am actually gonna add a touch of cream just to smooth it out. So crack your eggs into a bowl first. And one thing you want to remember too is when you're cracking an egg, don't crack it onto a bowl. Don't hit it on the edge of a bowl. Always crack it onto a bigger flat surface. When you crack it onto an edge of a bowl, sometimes it could shove the pieces of shell back into the inside part of the egg, and you don't want that. So always crack it, like I'm cracking it on my cutting board, or you crack it on the countertop. That's where you want to crack it. You do not want to crack it on the edge of the bowl. Okay, so now we have 3 eggs in here. I am going to whisk this a little. I'm going to use a fork just to get it so it's mixed a little bit. And I'm going to add about a tablespoon of cream to this. Now you don't want to add a ton of cream or a ton of water or a ton of anything else to this, because if you do, you're basically adding water to this. Now heavy cream is almost, it's a lot of fat, but it's also got some water in it. And the more water you put in it, the more liquidy the eggs are going to be, and the longer they have to cook to get rid of that liquid, or they're going to be wet when you serve them. So you want to make sure that your eggs are nice and beaten well. You do not have to fold air into this. So the longer you whip this, the more air you're going to put in this, and you don't have to. Now there are some egg recipes that require you to do that. Scrambled eggs do not require you to do that. So now there's a huge issue on whether or not you should salt and pepper your eggs beforehand. I do it for ease. I don't think that there is a massive difference between me salt and peppering afterwards or during. I normally do it beforehand for my scrambled eggs just because it's an ease of use thing. And I have not ever really noticed any major difference between an egg that's been salted a few seconds before I put it in the pan or after I've taken it out of the pan. I've never really noticed much difference. But you can find people online that will tell you that you are doing it 100% wrong if you salt before or after. I've been cooking a lot of eggs in my life and I've never really noticed a difference. So I'm gonna add a little salt. Tiny touch of pepper. So here's a trick to a really, really nicely cooked scrambled egg. First thing is I'm going to add butter, but I'm not going to add butter to my pan. I'm going to add a nice knob of butter, you know, about a tablespoon, maybe a little more. I'm going to add it directly to my egg. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start in a cold pan. Now you got to have a good nonstick pan for this. Unless you want to soak it afterwards, you know, you could cook, of course, in any other kind of pan. The egg will just get stuck to the bottom of it. Now in this, it's not going to get stuck because it's a nonstick pan. In nonstick pans, that doesn't happen. So start in a cold pan. I'm going to pour my eggs directly in here. And then I'm going to set my temperature for my eggs to a medium-high heat. And as it starts to turn, I'm going to start moving it around the pan. Now, a good scrambled egg, if I'm not making an omelet out of it or something like that, I'm going to try to make sure that I'm breaking up all of the coagulated proteins that are going to be coagulated in a long string. So sometimes eggs can be a little thick and feel almost like a little plasticky. And that's if you cook your eggs straight away and just let them cook, they will cook and the proteins will sort of all connect. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to knock those proteins apart. So as I cook the egg, I am knocking those proteins around so that that doesn't happen to this egg. Now, if your stove's cooking a little fast, you can always pull the egg off the heat a little bit, stir it around, right? So it's off the heat now. I'm just going to stir it around for a second to make sure I'm breaking up all those pieces of protein, and then I can put it right back on the stove again, and it'll get nice and hot. It's a lot easier with a gas burner than it is with my induction. So we can see that the egg is starting to coagulate in here, and I'm breaking apart all the pieces of egg that are starting to form and sort of form together, and breaking them into nice tiny clumps. And that's going to make your egg really, really soft, and that's going to give it that wonderful texture. That's almost like a custardy texture for your cooked final egg. So now once it starts to really start to come together, I'm going to stop stirring, and I'm just going to start pushing it around the pan. Starting to really come together, I'm going to start pushing it around the pan just to let it cook and let all the bits of it cook and all the water cook out of it. Now, some people like eggs that are very, very runny. I'm not one of those types of people. So I'm going to cook this a little longer than some people might cook it. I will take it off the heat here in a second and put it on the plate. But I'm going to cook all this liquid out of it, as you can see. And this egg is going to be super soft. So now you see how there's just a tiniest bit of liquid in here? I'm going to pull it off the heat now. So I'm just going to slide this onto my plate. The egg itself is nice and cooked all the way through. And in my opinion, this is the best way to make scrambled eggs. I've cooked a lot of scrambled eggs in my life, and I have never come across a way to cook scrambled eggs and to have them firm up and be as creamy as this method. So I'm going to taste these actually really quickly because I'm a huge fan of scrambled eggs. What's amazing about this is that there's so much butter flavor in these. So much more than you would have if you just cooked them in a hot pan with butter in it. It really just incorporates. It's almost like you're whisking the butter into it and it's just incorporating, and it's got this amazing butter flow. I didn't even add anything to these eggs, and they're outstanding. They're delicious. And they've got so much rich fat flavor from both the yolk and the butter. This is really a top-notch way to make eggs. And another thing you can do to just add just a tiniest bit to this is right as they're coming off, you could chop a little chive in here, and it gives it that nice oniony flavor, which is really wonderful too. So I think this is the best way you could possibly cook scrambled eggs. Of course, if you think something different, if you cook scrambled eggs differently, let me know in the comments how you cook them. Okay, last recipe of the day. Now this is the most complex, but it's really not terribly complex. And it's not really a recipe. You can certainly basically cook whatever you like in your eggs in this recipe. This is an awesome brunch recipe when you have people over because it doesn't take a long time and you don't have to babysit this recipe. So it's really great for that. So I'm gonna make a frittata. You need an oven-safe pan for this. Cast iron works great. I currently have this non-stick which has a rubber handle on it, but I know it's good at temperatures up to 500 degrees. So I'm gonna use this pan today just for the ease of unmolding it, but a cast iron pan is really a great thing to use as well. So we gotta get our mise en place ready to start out. The first thing we have to do is start cutting all of the different vegetables that I'm gonna put in. So today what I'm gonna put in a little bit of mushroom, I'm gonna put shallot, I'm gonna put bacon, I'm gonna put tomato, and I'm gonna add a little bit of shredded cheese at the very end. And so for my mushrooms, I wanna just cut my mushrooms and slice them. You can dice them if you like. I'm gonna slice these relatively thin. I'm not gonna do big chunks of mushroom on this because I wanna try to get some of the water out of it. So for the shallot, I'm actually gonna dice the shallot. I don't want big chunks of shallot into the final dish here. So I wanna make sure that I dice the shallot up. If you wanna have bigger pieces of shallot into your final dish, that's absolutely fine. Again, we're cooking this exactly how we wanna cook it. So whatever you wanna bite into the final frittata, that's how you wanna cut your vegetables. Nice tiny dice of shallot is gonna be perfect for this. And really, genuinely, you can't go wrong with the classic combination of mushroom, shallot, And I have bacon I'm going to add to this. And that is genuinely a classic combination of 3 flavors that goes so well together. It's going to make a lot of different things taste very, very good. And eggs are, like I said earlier, a blank palette. So you're going to just have such a wonderful flavor when all this is done. And you didn't do a lot of work. You didn't put a lot of work into it. This is something I learned through trial and error. So I want to pass this bit of information onto you. You can just take tomatoes and throw them directly into your frittata. But what you are creating is a tiny magma pod that will burst into your mouth and explode and make you scream and maybe spit your frittata out. So my suggestion to you is to not do that. And instead, you should slice all of your tomatoes in half before you add them to your final dish. Trust me on this, you are going to want to do this. If the tomato is a little large, cut it into quarters. That always helps so people don't try to choke down half a tomato in a single bite. But trust me on this, you do not want to add these tiny little cherry tomatoes because they are like little heat grenades and they will burn your face off. Okay, lastly, of course, I have my bacon here, and I am going to cut this into lardons. And that means that I'm not just going to cut it into big chunky pieces. I'm going to cut it into what they call lardons, which are matchsticks, right? So I want to cut them pretty thin so that when I finally do add them to the pan, they not only cook evenly, but all of it's going to be crisp, which is what I want. And this is the counter bacon you get from the butcher, and it's got this amazing smoky smell. I'm just cutting it and I can smell that smoky smell. So remember, if you just, handled raw pork, you want to wash your hands afterwards so that if you touch anything else in your kitchen, you're not contaminating it or possibly contaminating it. So now, next thing I'm going to do is get my eggs ready. Most of my mise en place is already cut. It's ready to get sauteed and cooked. But what I don't want to do is, while I'm cooking, start to crack my eggs. And it's not going to hurt for the eggs to be sitting already whisked and ready to go. So I'm just going to crack them now to get that out of the way. And if you do wind up getting a little piece of shell into the egg, remember that you can always fish it out using a nice sturdy piece of shell. So now I'm going to add a little bit of heavy cream here. Again, you don't want to add so much heavy cream because the more heavy cream I add, the more liquid I add, and I want to actually make sure that these are solid in the end. So I'm not going to add a ton. I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup total to this. There's 6 eggs in here, so about a 1/4 cup of cream, and then I'm just going to whisk it. And I just want to break the yolks up. That's all. I don't need to get a lot of air in here or incorporate a lot of air. I'm just spinning it around, making sure that it looks homogeneous so that it all looks one color, and that's all I want to do. So we have preheated our oven to 375 convection, 400 conventional. And what's going to happen is I'm going to actually saute stuff in here, and then once I add the eggs, I'm just going to put it right in the oven. So we're going to start by sauteing the bacon. Now, bacon doesn't need any extra fat. It shouldn't anyway. And if there is a lot of oil in your pan, if you're using bacon or some other fatty meat, like a sausage or something, you can always drain some of that oil out. I am going to need some oil in the pan to actually cook up my shallots. So I want to make sure that there is a tiny bit in there, but I don't want a ton. I don't want it swimming. So I'm going to cook this on medium-high heat. Hopefully some of this fat's going to render off of here. The key here is that I want to render some of that fat, crisp the fat, and crisp the meat of the bacon so that all the bacon is finally crisped up. I don't want to have undercooked bacon because it'll be a little chewy in there, and I don't want it to be chewy. The other key when you're cooking bacon, especially when you're trying to crisp it, is to make sure it's not stacked up on top of itself. Spread it out as much as possible in the bottom of the pan. The farther you spread it out, the more chance you have of that liquid that's in the bacon to escape as steam. If it just stays underneath and steams, then it's not going to get crispy. It's not going to get brown. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. If I'm just steaming this bacon, sure, it'll be cooked, but it'll be floppy and it won't have that beautiful brown outside texture, which makes bacon delicious. So So I'm gonna turn my pan up to a little hotter now that it started to render. I keep my pan a little cooler at first because I wanna make sure that I render some of that fat out of there. But as time goes on and there's enough fat in the bottom and it's covering the pan, I will turn the heat up to make sure that I get a nice crisp brown outside of that bacon. So keep it moving so that you're not burning your bacon. That's always key too. If you keep it moving and you keep shaking it and you keep spinning it around, it's not going to sit in one place and it won't burn. And that's, you don't, burning the bacon, you can ruin a whole pan of bacon just by burning a tiny bit of it. This bacon is starting to get nice and brown. I'm just moving it around, making sure it's not staying in one place. I'm shaking the pan. That's a really good way to distribute everything inside of the pan, is to give it a good shake. If you shake it and slide it back and forth, it'll make sure that things sort of level out into one nice level. Okay, so my bacon is pretty much cooked. There's tiny bits of white in there, but that's gonna finally cook all the way through. I am gonna pull a little bit of this oil out of here just really quickly. I pulled a full 3 tablespoons of oil out of this. I'm adding my shallot to my pan, and I'm gonna stir this in. And let me tell you something. The moment you smell bacon and shallot together, you will know why it's a marriage and why it is absolutely one of the most classic flavors in, especially in French cooking. So I'm just adding my mushrooms to this. There is enough salt in this with this bacon, with as much bacon as I put in here, so I don't have to add any seasonings, any kind of salt seasonings to this right now. But the key is that I'm going to keep on stirring this, and I want to sweat these mushrooms out a little. I want to make sure that these mushrooms leak out a little bit of their the water that's inside of them, because mushrooms are full of water. There's a ton of water in mushrooms, and if I cook these without getting at least some of that water to evaporate, it's going to make the final piece be a little wet. And it also concentrates the flavor of the mushroom. The more I cook the water out of the mushroom, the more flavor that's in that mushroom, and the more burst of flavor is going to happen when people bite into this final frittata here. Okay, so these mushrooms are starting to really cook down really nicely. We're going to let it go for a minute or two more. These are cooked kind of perfectly. You can see some of these mushrooms have a little bit of bits of brown on them. That's perfect. That's going to be wonderful in this final dish. So I'm just going to shake this out a little bit, separate it, and now I'm going to turn the heat off, okay? So the heat's going to come off, and I'm going to start, I'm going to actually add my eggs. And like I said earlier, there's actually quite a bit of salt in this from this bacon. So I'm not adding any salt to this. If it needs it in the final dish, I'll add a little bit later on, but I am pretty confident that this amount of bacon, 5 slices of bacon in this 6 egg frittata, is gonna be plenty enough to season it. I am gonna add some pepper though. And I'm gonna put this directly into the eggs right now and then just give it a quick whisk, and then I'm gonna drop it right into this pan. So this is all on the bottom. I've put it all on the bottom. It's still a little warm. As you can see, it's still a little sizzling, but I am not going to stir this. Once I pour this in, that's it. That's the end of it, and I'm just going to dump it right into the oven after I add my couple more ingredients. So I'm trying not to add too much too quickly to push this out. I'm going to sprinkle my tomatoes in right now over the top so that I'm covering the whole of the frittata, and it is got tomato again, like I said, on every slice. So now I am going to add some aged cheddar to this. No, I'm not. I'm kidding. This is actually mozzarella because Sarah didn't order the aged cheddar like I asked her to. So
you can go to the store yourself, you know.
You know, I would, but there's coronavirus and it's pretty dangerous. So I'm going to add this mozzarella to the top. You can add whatever kind of cheese you have on hand. Aged cheddar would be perfect in something like this, though. I'll tell you, it'd be really good. Nice added flavor with your aged cheddar. This is ready to go into the oven, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm put it in. Now this is going to cook for a little while. I would check it after about 10 minutes, and then it can cook to as much as 20 minutes. It's going to puff up a little bit while it's in there because the eggs will start to rise a bit. But shake it and touch the center of it, and if it's still liquid, you want to keep cooking it until it's completely cooked. All right, it's been cooking for 10 minutes. Remember, if you take a pan out of your oven, you want to make sure you're using a pot holder or something else to hold on to it because it just came out of the oven and it's super hot. So now this is our mushroom, bacon, shallot, tomato frittata. It's only been cooking for 10 minutes. And as you can see, it's completely finished. It's all the way solid, all the way through, but it's not overcooked. I'm going to put a little piece on a plate. So as I said before, this tomato is going to be nice and hot. It's going to be really, really boiling. So I'm probably not going to bite into the tomato portion here. But one thing that's really wonderful is if you take a salad, cut up some greens nice and fine, right? Chop your greens nice and fine. Put a little bit of whatever else you want in your salad, cucumber, carrot, all kinds of different vegetables, a little bit of broccoli, but make sure everything's nice and fine. That's the key, is chop it up really fine. Dress it off, so don't put the dressing on. Dress it in a bowl ahead of time with the tiniest bit of dressing. Vinaigrette, just a straight vinaigrette is perfect for this. And then just put a little tiny bit on top and serve that. The salad goes really well with this frittata, and it's absolutely a complete brunch dish. It's perfect. All right, so in here, it's like I say, it's completely cooked. It's actually perfectly cooked right now. This is a nice portion. It does not have a little bit of the tomato in it, but like I said, this just came out of the oven, and these tomatoes are going to be really, really hot. So let's give it a try. I was right about the amount of salt. It's kind of the perfect amount of salt right now. It's not overpowering. It's not too salty. If I would have salted the eggs, it might have been a little too salty, but that bacon did a perfect job here. Mozzarella cheese is really nice. Probably would be better if it was aged cheddar, but it's still okay. This is actually really, really delicious, and classic flavors that really meld well together. You can put whatever you want in this. You want to put broccoli in here. If you want to use a different kind of mushroom, that's totally fine. I've put cauliflower in here before. I've put ham, peppers. Whatever you like in your omelet, you can put in this frittata. If you use more eggs, more people are coming over, and you want to use more eggs, you want to use a whole dozen, you just got to cook it a little longer. Just make sure that you're touching the center, and it's probably going to cook for 20 minutes at that point. But you got to cook it for just a little bit longer. But it's a really simple recipe for you, and I'm sure you're really going to love it. So thank you so much for watching Season Liberally 101 Egg Cookery. And if you really like this video, please let me know in the comments below. And please like and share this particular video and all the videos on my channel. If there's somebody that you think would like the video, share it with them. And hit the bell down below. That allows you, so when I upload something, it'll come into your feed, into your subscription feed on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you again. Thank you.